promised us that they were going to hire 200 people. Instead, they're letting 160 of us go.
General Electric is firing 10,000 employees and shutting down their headquarters. But here's what's really happening. They've been systematically destroying American jobs for years while pocketing $8.5 billion in government contracts. Wait until you see how they split into 3 companies to escape accountability completely. Here's the full scoop. The shocking truth. We're about to expose the explosive truth behind one of America's most iconic companies and how they've been systematically dismantling their workforce while playing a dangerous game of corporate manipulation that's left thousands of families in financial ruin. The most brutal part, this isn't just happening now. It's been a calculated destruction spanning multiple years, with GE implementing layoffs across its divisions since 2022, affecting thousands of workers who believed they had job security at one of America's most established corporations.
Dozens of GE appliance workers in Bloomington are protesting the company's decision to cut 160 jobs here, 3 years after announcing a multi-million-dollar investment in the company.
Here's where this story gets absolutely infuriating. While workers are losing their livelihoods, GE executives have been orchestrating one of the most sophisticated corporate breakups in American history, splitting the company into 3 separate entities while leaving employees to bear the devastating consequences. The outrageous reality is that what's being reported as a single catastrophic event is actually the culmination of a multi-year strategy that has systematically eliminated jobs across every major division of this once mighty industrial giant. The corporate media is feeding you lies about the scale, but the systematic destruction of American jobs is far more extensive and calculated than they want you to know. The explosive evidence shows that GE Appliances cut 5% of its global workforce in 2022, citing inflation and rising costs, before coming back for more blood in 2024 with another 4% reduction in its global salaried workforce. These weren't desperate moves by a failing company. These were calculated decisions by executives who knew exactly what they were doing, systematically bleeding American jobs while maintaining their own obscene compensation packages.
GE says it's cutting 1/3 of the factory's jobs because of a 30% drop in sales since 2010.
The shocking truth about the headquarters claim reveals something even more sinister. This calculated downsizing wasn't about saving money. It was about preparing for the corporate breakup that would leave thousands of workers without jobs, while executives positioned themselves for maximum personal profit from the restructuring. What makes this absolutely devastating is how GE has been playing a shell game with American workers for decades. While maintaining the facade of operational continuity, they've been systematically dismantling their workforce through what they euphemistically call strategic restructuring. The numbers are brutal and paint a picture of corporate cruelty that would make even the most hardened Wall Street executive blush. GE Aerospace announced layoffs of over 70 workers at its Schenectady, New York site. GE Vernova faced potential layoffs of 900 jobs worldwide, and GE Renewable Energy cut hundreds of jobs in its onshore wind unit, representing 20% of its US-based wind workforce.
There's no future here. With 75% of your refrigerators being built in Mexico, this plant is underutilized. When it's an underutilized plant, General Electric moves it out. This plant cannot sustain itself here.
The outrageous hypocrisy becomes clear when you realize that these layoffs weren't driven by financial desperation. They were driven by corporate greed and strategic positioning for maximum shareholder value extraction. GE provided comprehensive severance packages to affected employees, including 30-day notices, up to 6 months of severance, medical coverage, and outplacement support. If the company was truly in financial distress, would they be able to afford such generous packages? This is corporate theater at its most cynical, appearing generous while systematically destroying American manufacturing jobs. The most explosive revelation is how this connects to a broader pattern of corporate manipulation that dates back decades, rooted in the toxic philosophy that turned American capitalism into a worker-crushing machine. This isn't just about recent economic pressures. This is about a systematic approach to workforce management that prioritizes shareholder value over employee security, community stability, and national economic strength. The evidence shows that GE has historically had a reputation for significant layoffs, notably during former CEO Jack Welch's tenure in the 1980s and 1990s, when 250,000 jobs were cut.
Promised us that they were going to hire 200 people. Instead, they're letting 160 of us go. They promised basically jobs for our kids if they wanted them.
But here's what makes this story absolutely infuriating and exposes the complete moral bankruptcy of modern corporate America. While workers are being systematically eliminated like pieces on a chessboard, GE continues to secure massive government contracts funded by the very taxpayers whose jobs they're destroying. GE Aerospace recently secured a $5 billion U.S. Air Force contract and a $3.5 billion contract modification for the Next Generation Adaptive Propulsion Program. The company isn't failing. It's thriving at the expense of its workforce, literally profiting from the very government government whose citizens they're throwing into unemployment lines. The devastating impact on families and communities cannot be overstated, and it reveals the true human cost of this corporate sociopathy. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are real people whose lives have been turned upside down by corporate decisions made in boardrooms by executives who will never feel the pain of unemployment, never worry about losing their homes, never face the humiliation of explaining to their children why daddy or mommy can't afford Christmas presents this year. The ripple effects extend far beyond the workers themselves, affecting local economies, suppliers, and entire communities that have depended on GE's presence for decades, creating economic dead zones where once thriving American manufacturing communities stood.
They promised, they promised basically jobs for our kids if they wanted them. That's not happening.
What's most shocking is how this pattern continues to repeat itself across corporate America like a deadly virus, with GE serving as both the patient zero and the blueprint for how companies can systematically reduce their workforce while maintaining profitability and securing government contracts. This systematic approach to workforce destruction has become so normalized that business schools now teach it as a legitimate strategy, and Wall Street rewards companies that can eliminate the most jobs while maintaining revenue streams. This isn't just a story about one company's layoffs. It's an expose of a system that prioritizes profits over people, shareholders over employees, and short-term gains over long-term community stability. The brutal truth is that what we're witnessing isn't just corporate restructuring, it's the systematic dismantling of the American dream. One layoff at a time, one plant closure at a time, one community destruction at a time. How GE engineered its great escape. Now we're diving into the most explosive part of this investigation. How General Electric orchestrated one of the most sophisticated corporate breakups in American history while systematically destroying the job security of thousands of workers.
And beyond the enormous job losses over the years, that's the fear that these newest job cuts are the beginning of the end for the plant and its remaining employees.
The devastating truth is that GE's transformation into 3 separate publicly traded companies, GE Aerospace, GE Vernova, and GE Healthcare, was completed in early 2024, representing one of the largest corporate breakups in American history. This wasn't just corporate restructuring. This was a calculated strategy to shed responsibilities, eliminate jobs, and maximize shareholder value while leaving workers to deal with the consequences of a company that no longer existed in its original form. The genius of this scheme lies in its legal complexity. By splitting the company, GE effectively created a shell game where accountability could be shuffled between different entities, making it nearly impossible for workers, communities, or even government regulators to hold anyone truly responsible for the systematic job destruction. Here's where this gets absolutely infuriating and reveals the true scope of corporate America's war on working families. While GE was splitting itself apart like a hydra, it was simultaneously conducting what can only be described as a systematic elimination of its workforce across every continent where it operated. GE Vernova, the energy business spun off from GE in April 2024, announced potential layoffs of 900 jobs worldwide due to operational challenges, including inflation, supply chain disruptions, and delays in power production due to blade failures in offshore wind projects. But these weren't operational challenges. They were engineered crises designed to justify workforce reductions that had been planned long before the supposed emergencies occurred. The shocking evidence reveals that these weren't isolated incidents, but part of a coordinated campaign that stretches across multiple years and multiple continents, a global assault on working families that was orchestrated with military precision. GE Vernova reported a $300 million loss due to 3 separate blade breaks, one of which scattered debris off Vineyard's southern shore, leading to ongoing investigations by the Federal Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement. Instead of taking responsibility for these operational failures, instead of investing in better quality control or improved manufacturing processes, the company's response was to eliminate jobs and downsize operations, essentially punishing workers for management's failures. But the most explosive revelation comes from understanding how this connects to the broader economic landscape and reveals the true scope of what's happening in America right now. The layoffs aren't just happening in isolation. They're occurring alongside massive federal workforce reductions in 2025, with over 58,000 confirmed cuts, 76,000 employee buyouts, and over 148,000 other planned reductions. This creates a perfect storm where corporate layoffs are compounded by government job losses, creating unprecedented economic uncertainty that serves the interests of those who profit from chaos and instability. The brutal reality of GE's international operations reveals an even more disturbing pattern that exposes the global nature of this assault on working families. GE Vernova announced the closure of its wind blade factory in Swap, Brazil, affecting 1,000 jobs while simultaneously cutting 360 jobs at its Montoir de Bretagne and Nantes sites in France. This represents 33% of the workforce at Montoir de Bretagne and 58% at Nantes, with nearly 1,000 jobs lost in the region region when including temporary positions. This isn't just American workers being sacrificed. This is a global strategy to eliminate manufacturing jobs wherever they exist, regardless of the human cost. The outrageous hypocrisy becomes even more apparent when you examine GE's financial maneuvering and discover the breathtaking scope of their corporate welfare dependency. While eliminating thousands of jobs, GE Aerospace is facing challenges due to tariffs expected to cost over $500 million in 2025. Yet the company continues to secure massive government contracts and maintain profitability. The message is crystal clear. Workers are expendable, but profit margins are sacred, and the American taxpayer will be forced to subsidize both the job destruction and the corporate profits that result from it. The most devastating aspect of this corporate shell game is how it's designed to confuse and mislead both employees and the public while creating a legal structure that makes accountability nearly impossible. By splitting into 3 companies, GE has effectively diluted responsibility and accountability in a way that would make the most sophisticated money launderer envious. When GE Aerospace lays off workers, they can blame it on spin-off restructuring. When GE Vernova cuts jobs, they can point to operational challenges in the renewable energy sector. When GE Appliances eliminates positions, they can cite industry-wide downturns. It's a perfect system for avoiding responsibility while maximizing the extraction of value from American workers and communities. The explosive evidence shows that this strategy has deep historical roots that trace back to one of the most destructive periods in American economic history. GE has a historical reputation for significant layoffs, particularly during the tenure of former CEO Jack Welch in the 1980s and 1990s, when 250,000 jobs were cut. What we're seeing now isn't an aberration. It's the continuation of a decades-long pattern of prioritizing shareholder value over employee welfare, a philosophy that has systematically destroyed American manufacturing and turned once proud industrial communities into economic graveyards. The shocking scope of the current situation becomes clear when you realize that GE's layoffs in 2025 are limited to specific business segments, affecting hundreds to low thousands, not 10,000. But the cumulative impact across multiple years and divisions creates a devastating effect on American workers and communities that far exceeds any single mass layoff event. This is death by 1,000 cuts, a systematic bleeding of American jobs that's designed to avoid the kind of dramatic headlines that might actually inspire public outrage. What makes this absolutely infuriating is how GE has managed to maintain a positive public image while systematically dismantling its workforce, using sophisticated public relations campaigns to mask the reality of their assault on American workers. The company continues to invest in research and development, with GE Vernova committing $50 million to MIT for graduate-level research projects and announcing a $600 million investment in U.S. manufacturing over the next 2 years, creating 1,500 new jobs. These announcements create a facade of growth and investment while masking the thousands of jobs that have been eliminated, allowing the company to appear as a job creator while actually being a job destroyer. The brutal truth is that this corporate shell game isn't just about GE. It's a blueprint being followed by corporations across America, a playbook that's been refined and perfected over decades of systematic workforce destruction. The strategy of splitting companies, outsourcing operations, and eliminating domestic jobs while maintaining government contracts and positive public relations has become the standard operating procedure for maximizing shareholder value at the expense of American workers, communities, and national economic strength. The most devastating aspect of this entire situation is how it's been facilitated by political and economic policies that prioritize corporate flexibility over worker security, creating a system where companies can eliminate jobs with impunity while facing no meaningful consequences. The ease with which companies can now eliminate jobs, restructure operations, and shift responsibilities through corporate breakups represents a fundamental shift in the American economy, one that has left workers increasingly vulnerable to the whims of corporate boardrooms and Wall Street speculators who view human beings as nothing more than line items on a balance sheet, the human cost, and the economic earthquake. The final chapter of this explosive investigation reveals the most devastating truth of all: the human cost of GE's systematic workforce destruction and how it's creating an economic earthquake that's rippling through communities across America like a slow-motion tsunami of economic devastation. What we've uncovered isn't just corporate malfeasance, it's a preview of what happens when American workers become expendable in the pursuit of quarterly profits, when human dignity becomes secondary to shareholder returns, and when entire communities are sacrificed on the altar of corporate greed. The shocking reality is that GE's layoffs are occurring amidst a challenging economic environment, including an anticipated recession and significant federal workforce reductions, creating a perfect storm that's leaving families financially devastated and communities economically hollowed out like something out of a dystopian nightmare. This isn't just about one company's downsizing. This is about the systematic destruction of the American middle class, the deliberate dismantling of the economic foundation that built the greatest prosperity in human history, and the creation of a two-tier society where a small elite prospers while the majority struggles for survival. The brutal impact on local economies cannot be overstated, and it reveals the true scope of what's happening when you eliminate good-paying manufacturing jobs from American communities. When GE announced layoffs affecting hundreds of workers in its U.S. onshore wind sector and 360 jobs in France at GE Vernova's wind power sites, the ripple effects extended far beyond the workers themselves, creating economic shockwaves that devastated local businesses, suppliers, and service providers. Every manufacturing job supports multiple other jobs in the community. When you eliminate a manufacturing job, you're not just destroying one family's livelihood, you're creating a cascade of economic destruction that can take decades to repair. The most infuriating aspect of this economic devastation is how it's been compounded by broader federal policies that seem designed to maximize the pain inflicted on working families. The Trump administration's implementation of mass federal layoffs, described as the largest in history, has created an environment where both corporate and government job losses are occurring simultaneously, creating unprecedented economic uncertainty that's pushing families to the brink of financial ruin. This isn't coincidence. This is a coordinated assault on the American middle class that's being carried out by corporate boardrooms and government offices working in deadly harmony. What makes this absolutely explosive is how GE has managed to profit from this chaos, while ordinary Americans suffer the consequences of decisions made in boardrooms they'll never enter. While eliminating thousands of jobs, GE Aerospace is actively lobbying for policy changes to address tariff-related challenges, with CEO Larry Culp meeting with former President Trump to advocate for a tariff-free regime. The company is literally profiting from political connections while destroying American jobs, using their access to power to secure favorable treatment while throwing their own workers into unemployment lines. The devastating long-term consequences become clear when you examine the broader economic trends and realize that what we're witnessing isn't just a temporary downturn, it's the systematic restructuring of the American economy to benefit a small elite at the expense of everyone else. One analysis in 2018 estimated that if we reverted back to the proportions of corporate profits that went to employees that was common in the 1970s, every worker in the US could get a $3,500 bonus. Instead, we're seeing the opposite. Companies like GE are systematically reducing their workforce while increasing executive compensation and shareholder returns, creating a system where the rich get richer while working families struggle to survive. The shocking scope of this economic transformation is evident in how it's affected entire regions, turning once thriving manufacturing communities into economic wastelands. Trade unions have warned of the social impact in regions dependent on wind power, highlighting how these layoffs aren't just individual tragedies, but community-wide disasters that can take decades to recover from. When a major employer like GE pulls out of a community, it doesn't just eliminate jobs, it destroys the tax base, closes schools, shutters local businesses, and creates a spiral of decline that can persist for generations. The most outrageous aspect of this entire situation is how it connects to historical patterns of corporate behavior that have been devastating American workers for decades, revealing a deliberate strategy to destroy worker power and community stability. The influence of economists like Milton Friedman and executives like Jack Welch created a corporate culture that prioritizes shareholder value above all else, and GE's current actions are simply the latest manifestation of this destructive philosophy that has systematically destroyed American manufacturing and turned working families into disposable commodities. The brutal reality for affected families is compounded by the broader economic environment that seems designed to maximize their suffering. Experts warn that federal layoffs combined with corporate layoffs like GE's could trigger an economic retrenchment, reducing government spending and consumer confidence. This creates a vicious cycle where job losses lead to reduced spending, which leads to more job losses, creating a downward spiral that can devastate entire regions and persist for years or even decades. The explosive evidence shows that this isn't just an American problem, it's a global phenomenon that reveals the true scope of corporate power and its ability to destroy communities wherever they exist. Political responses have emerged in France, with MP Matthias Tavel asking Prime Minister Michel Barnier to guarantee the future of the Montoire de Bretagne site, emphasizing its role in energy transition and national energy sovereignty. This highlights how corporate decisions made in American boardrooms have international consequences affecting working families across multiple continents and demonstrating the global reach of corporate power to destroy lives and communities. I mean, I feel nervous for our household budget. With 2 kids especially living in San Francisco, which is one of the most expensive cities in this country, I wonder what our grocery bill is going to be like. I wonder if we can afford to upgrade our car when it breaks down. All those things are on my mind. I think it's really going to hurt our pocketbook. The devastating truth is that while GE continues to secure massive government contracts and maintain profitability, the human cost of their workforce reduction strategy continues to mount in ways that reveal the true moral bankruptcy of modern capitalism. Families are losing their homes. Children are being forced to drop out of college. Elderly parents are being forced into substandard care facilities, and entire communities are being economically hollowed out by corporate decisions that prioritize quarterly earnings over long-term stability, human dignity, and community welfare. The most shocking aspect of this entire investigation is how it reveals the complete disconnect between corporate success success and worker welfare in modern America, exposing a system that has become so corrupted that success is measured by how efficiently companies can eliminate jobs while maintaining profits. GE Vernova's CEO noted an order backlog stretching into 2028, suggesting robust future operations. Yet the company continues to eliminate jobs and reduce its workforce, proving that job destruction has nothing to do with business necessity and everything to do with maximizing profits for shareholders and executives. This isn't just a story about General Electric, it's an expose of a system that has fundamentally broken the social contract between employers and employees, corporations and communities, and business leaders and the American people. The time for half measures and corporate apologies is over. The time for accountability is now. The time to fight back against this systematic destruction of American families and communities is today. Thanks for watching today. Check out our other videos for more stimulating content.